Welcome to Brain Injury Speaks, the podcast. Brought to you by Brain Injury Speaks and the Ontario Brain Injury Association. Episode 1, Part 2, Russ discusses brain injury awareness. Welcome to Brain Injury Speaks, the podcast, in affiliation with the Ontario Brain Injury Association. My name is Allison. I work at OBIA as a support service and network advocate, assisting with our Brain Injury Speaks network, projects, and newsletters. This podcast is aimed to exploring stories, struggles, and triumphs of individuals living with acquired brain injuries, as well as providing insights and ideas from experts, advocates, and professionals working to make a difference. Whether you're living with a brain injury or supporting someone who is, this is your podcast to find support, information, and hope. So let's dive in. Trigger warning and disclaimer. Stories shared discuss personal stories related to brain injuries, which may be triggering for some viewers. Any views and opinions shared by guests may not reflect the views and opinions of OBIA. Thanks for tuning in to Part 2 of Episode 1, where we're continuing Russ's powerful journey. In Part 1, Russ opened up about his life-changing experience of sustaining a brain injury and what living with it has been like ever since. If you haven't listened to it yet, hit pause and head over to the OBIA website where you can catch up on Episode 1. It's definitely a story worth hearing. In this episode, Russ shifts gears and talks about why raising awareness about brain injury matters, not just personally, but within our communities and the entire province. Let's dive back in and hear more from Russ. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about brain injuries that you would wish to address?
Misconceptions. People with brain injuries don't generally forget who they wanted to be before the brain injury. Like for me, it was, maybe moving to head office or being a district manager or something like that. We don't forget what we wanted to do, but we have to deal with redefining our own goals. But we're kind of the same person we used to be. There can be a lot of feelings of hopelessness, desperation, and people don't know how to deal with them. But there is help out there for you. I know I'm not the same person I was before my accident. I can't do the same things I used to do before my accident. But I would like to believe that overall, I'm a better person today. So things can be better for you after your accident or your acquired brain injury. One of the big misconceptions is acquired brain injury is an invisible disability.
Right.
Okay. Because of the accident, I wear a brace on my knee. And people will ask me, oh, what did you do to your knee? But they have absolutely no idea that I'm living with the effects of a traumatic brain injury. You can't look at me and say, oh, you've got a brain injury. Okay, how did that, it just doesn't show that it's not something that's just easily, detectable is not the right word, but it's not easily recognized when you see somebody with a traumatic brain injury. I'll give a quick example. I was out with a good friend of mine who also has a traumatic brain injury. We were shopping, and he had a large purchase, and he couldn't remember the PIN number for his card.
Okay.
There was a person in line that actually said, hurry up, you idiot. I have things to do.
Oh my goodness.
So in my head, I wanted to knock this guy out. But again, cognitive behavioral therapy came in And I actually just went over to the gentleman and I explained to him that, my friend had a traumatic brain injury and he's just having a moment where he can't remember his PIN. Please be patient. And
Wow.
he actually apologized to him. So that's a great example of ABI being an invisible disability. Now I'm just going to list these off. Some of the biggest misconceptions. We've already talked about this one. Recovery is not completed in the first 2 years. I'm still making progress to this day. And as we talked about, it's 16 years afterwards. Only athletes are at risk of a traumatic brain injury. And you working at OBIA must understand that, because you see different people from all walks of life with an acquired brain injury.
Absolutely.
A direct impact to the head is not necessary for a brain injury. We know that acquired brain injury covers everything from the traumatic brain injury, which I experienced. You can help me here if I miss any. But acquired brain injury covers like brain tumors, cancer, asphyxia,
Stroke.
Stroke is a big one. Stroke is a big one. People don't realize that that's acquired brain injury. It's defined as any injury to the brain after birth.
Yes.
So there are many different ways to have an acquired brain injury. Symptoms are not always immediately apparent. Like you may suffer a concussion, but you may not realize it for 2 to 3 weeks. When you start noticing short-term memory loss, or maybe more headaches or migraines than you previously experienced. So you may not know right away that you have an acquired brain injury. The symptoms may appear much later. As we mentioned, every acquired brain injury is different.
Yes.
None of them are the same. And everybody has different symptoms and deficits of an acquired brain injury. What they call mild traumatic brain injuries will heal quickly. Like, they say, oh, you suffered a slight concussion. Well, there's no such thing as a slight concussion. And you may not heal quickly. It may, this slight concussion may take you months, years. You may never have full recovery from it. This is another important one too. ABI does not mean that you have diminished intelligence. Just because you have an acquired brain injury doesn't mean that you've lost all your abilities to live, communicate, etc. And a lot of people think too that ABIs, acquired brain injuries, are easily diagnosed by a CT scan or an MRI, as you know very well about that. They really don't always show up. You're better off to sometimes it may require a neuropsychologist to diagnose you with an acquired brain injury, and that's a very intensive test to say that you go through. Sometimes those are 2-3 days that you may be tested, and the neuropsychologist will have a much better understanding about diagnosing your acquired brain injury.
Join the Brain Injury Speaks Network today. Join the network and receive the Voice newsletter, take part in impactful surveys, share your story in our Photo Voice collective, share your thoughts, stories, and struggles, and have your voice heard. For more information, email braininjuryspeaks@obia.on.ca or call 905-641-8877 at extension 107. And so why do you feel it's important to kind of raise awareness about brain injuries? Because I know you do a lot of, you take part in a lot of different, projects, you support group, agreeing to do this podcast to spread awareness. So why do you think, it definitely is important to raise awareness about brain injuries?
I would say mostly because the general population has no idea what a brain injury is. They have no knowledge of what an acquired brain injury involves, or what an acquired brain injury is, or how, everybody knows about hitting your head and getting a concussion, but like we mentioned, there are so many other ways to unfortunately sustain an acquired brain injury. That is definitely one of the biggest ones. Raising awareness, I would like for people to understand what acquired brain injuries are. That would be a big one. If they just understood the fact that it's not just the concussion, the traumatic brain injury, it is a stroke. Like, a lot of people don't realize that stroke is an acquired brain injury. Maybe somebody having a tumor removed from their brain, and it's going to leave them with deficits. That's an acquired brain injury. I want people living with the effects of an acquired brain injury to not be afraid to talk about it. There's a lot of stigma about acquired brain injury. That after you have an acquired brain injury, you're not going to be able to function. You're in a rehab center for the rest of your life, etc., which is not just true. And if you are one of these people that are reluctant to talk about it, go to a local support group. You don't have to talk, but listen, because what somebody else may be saying or going through is the exact same thing that you're feeling. And just understanding that there's other people out there going through the same struggles can make a big difference. So I want to advocate for all the local associations out there. I want to advocate for OBIA. There's roughly 600,000 people in Ontario living with an acquired brain injury. And I believe it's estimated that 40,000 people a year will sustain an acquired brain injury. Just in Ontario.
Yes.
Back in Canada, just Ontario. So educating people about ABI can not only help the people living with ABI, but the people around them. So that's a big thing. I don't want to diminish any of these facts, but everybody knows about heart disease. Everybody knows about cancer. But very few people know about acquired brain injury and the services that are available to help them. We just talked about this. If you go to a hospital with a broken arm, they know exactly what to do. By the time they're done, you've been through an entire process and you're back to normal. But this is very different with acquired brain injuries because none of them are the same. They all have different deficits, and I want to help those people living with acquired brain injuries, especially who don't know where to turn for help or diagnosis. That's a big one.
Absolutely.
So
how do you feel maybe if maybe you knew a bit more about brain injuries before sustaining your own, or if there was kind of more awareness, do you think that would have had maybe a different effect on your own recovery, your own perspective? Because I know at the beginning you mentioned it took you a long time to maybe admit the fact that you were experiencing some of these symptoms and you didn't want to call it a brain injury. Do you think that might have played a different role at all?
absolutely, if there was more public awareness of acquired brain injury and more education, it would make a big difference. As I mentioned, I look back now at the injury I sustained when I was like 9 years old. What difference did that make in my life? Did that change me? I'll never know, because back then there was nothing. They just sent me home, and uh, I was unconscious for like 3 hours, but
Wow.
they still just sent me home. So I don't know what difference it would have made if I maybe had some help back then. So yeah, public education, public awareness, um, letting people know where to turn, who to call, how to get help. Um, if you're involved in some type of car accident or injuries that might not have been your fault, I do highly recommend you call a lawyer that's has brain injury experience. That's an invaluable asset to have in your pocket.
Yeah, having someone that kind of has that knowledge in the area.
Yeah, like I said, it was my lawyer that put my entire team together.
Wow.
So that was huge.
And what have been maybe some of the most effective ways you found to spread awareness or educate others about brain injury?
Well, as I'm doing right now, I'll talk to anybody. I'll talk to anybody who will listen. Um, I could be, let's say, out at a restaurant, for say, let's say, and I'm having a problem ordering what I want. If the waitress will listen, I'll tell her why I'm having a problem ordering what I want. So yeah, I'll talk to anybody, anywhere, anytime, and tell them my experience of my traumatic brain injury. Definitely, if you can, if you can, get involved in your local brain injury association. And I'm not saying that you've got to be. I'm not saying that you have to start your own sport group or anything like that, but they offer a ton of helpful information. Some of the associations actually offer support. They offer more than just information to help you. They can actually offer actual strategies or equipment that might help you in your recovery.
Amazing. Wow.
I never learned how to use a computer again, but I did learn how to use a tablet, and there are associations out there that will help you attain a tablet, help you learn how to use it, help you. These are just very minor things that they can do. They're very, very, very good resource.
Absolutely.
And if you can, volunteer your time with them. I'm not talking a lot. It may be like 1 or 2 hours a month, but it's good for your recovery. Volunteer at acquired brain injury events, even. As you know, there's a lot of events that aren't geared towards acquired brain injury, but they're geared towards wellness in your life, attend those. You might pick up an idea or something, or if you want, volunteer with OBIA and, share the story with people of those. I think another important one too, participate in research studies, participate in questionnaires about ABI, Brain Injury Speaks, which you run, puts out questionnaires from time to time. I think it's very important that people actually answer those, because the more data you can acquire gives you the more power to make changes on a big level. I've actually personally had my stories published in, the Sun, the National Post, and online sites about ABI. So just sharing your story can be the best way to spread awareness about ABI.
Absolutely. I definitely agree, and appreciate you again for coming today and taking your time to share your story once again. I know it'll have a very good impact on, listeners, hopefully inspiring, and again, just spreading general awareness. It's so important.
I hope so. Like I said, if I can just help one person, that would be a big thing for me.
Absolutely.
I may never know it, but just the fact that I might makes my life a little better.
Absolutely. It looks like we might just be out of time here, but again, I just want to say thank you so much, Russ, for being with us today, being so open and sharing your stories, and again, spreading awareness, and specifically awareness for Brain Injury Awareness Month. It's so important. So I just wanted to say thank you for listening to this episode of the Brain Injury Speaks podcast, brought to you by the Ontario Brain Injury Association. We hope today's conversation was helped shed a light on the challenges and triumphs of individuals with brain injury, and inspired you to spread awareness in your own community. If you or someone you know is navigating brain injury, remember you are not alone. Take care and keep speaking up. If you would like more information, the Brain Injury Speaks Network also shares newsletters throughout the year covering many different topics with brain injury, such as neuroplasticity, financial resources, music in the brain, and much, much more. You can find past issues online at obia.ca under the Voice newsletter. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you all have a great day. Thank you for listening to Brain Injury Speaks, the podcast. If you would like more information about the Ontario Brain Injury Association, visit our website at www.obia.ca. The Ontario Brain Injury Association is so excited to be presenting the new Brain Injury Awareness Flag. This flag was developed by an individual who themselves have sustained a brain injury. This flag is to help promote awareness and recognition of brain injuries across Ontario.